Hello, I'm Marianne Leeper, a member of the TVCC Read Through the Valley Book Club Committee. Welcome to our Read Through the Valley event with Mr. Jim Dent as our guest speaker. Mr. Dent is the author of our Read Through the Valley book club selection this year, The 12 Mighty Orphans. Mr. Dent is a longtime award-winning journalist who covered the Dallas Cowboys for 11 years at the Dallas Times-Herald and at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He's written 10 books, including the New York Times bestsellers 12 Mighty Orphans and The Junction Boys, which was made into a critically acclaimed movie from ESPN. Mr. Dent's latest book, Courage Beyond the Game, the Freddie Steinmark story, was published in 2012. Courage Beyond the Game is the ultimate underdog success story about Freddie Steinmark, with introduction by UT head football coach Matt Brown. It's a Texas story that transcends college football, displaying the courage and determination of one of the game's most valiant players. Mr. Dent lives in Texas. We were very fortunate that he was able to drive in to visit with us today. And at the end of Mr. Dent's presentation, he will be autographing books. The art exhibit on display outside the auditorium is provided by the TVCC Art Department of Professor Sue Trent and her students. The art exhibit includes the theme of the 12 Mighty Orphans. Please welcome Mr. Jim Dent.
Hello, Athens. I don't think I've ever been here. I don't know why. You know, because I guess you don't go, I mean, it's not that I didn't want to come to Athens, but I guess I've never crossed through here. You know, I guess with the freeways and everything, this is an absolutely beautiful place. You got a beautiful campus. I am touched to my very soul for what you've done. I'm amazed. I mean, I've had some really interesting adventures with this book that came out in 2007. I'm fortunate that so many school districts in Texas have read it. You know, there's probably 20 school districts that have made it required reading, and last year, I live in Allen. Allen made it one of their AP English classes. So I went to speak to them. Spoke to the Frisco Centennial football team about 3 months ago. And I told Brad Smiley, I'm going to come out to practice afterwards, after this is over, but don't let me talk to your football team, because I jinx you. I jinxed the Brenham team out of the playoffs 2 years ago, and the Ennis team, with my pep talk, knocked them out of the playoffs 4 years ago. So I'm going to go out there, but I'm not going to talk to the team. I want to talk a little, before I get into the background on the book, I want to talk a little bit about the tentacles that have spread in all directions over this story. And I tell people that it's really not a sports book, although sports is the vehicle, and football's the vehicle. But to me, it's more than a sports story because it's more about the orphans. It's about the kids who didn't have shoes 6 months out of the year, who had lost at least one parent, wound up in a strange place, and became the most interesting, educational, and fun thing that ever happened in their lives. I was signing books for the Arlington Library about 3 years ago at Cowboy Stadium. Jerry Jones didn't come because he hates me. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But there was this long line after I spoke of people who wanted me to sign their book. And there was a woman about 10 deep who was giving me this dirty look. And I could see her moving up toward the table, and I'm going, what did I do to her? You know, was this my long-lost girlfriend from 1976 that I jilted? She got up to the table, and she still had this look like she was going to kill me. She walked up to the table, and slammed her palm down on the table and looked at me, and then she pulled up her 12-year-old son and she said, "I want you to know this is the first book he's ever read." And she was crying. You know, it's that kind of stuff that makes you want to continue to do these kinds of things. Everywhere I go, the question that I'm asked more than anything else, and I told the group at lunch, they don't say, "Dent, how are you doing?" They say, "Dent, when is the damn movie coming out?" Well, I got a little bit of news. It looks like that we're going to have a deal with a big independent Hollywood producer who is ready to make it. I mean, they've got the screenplay. I think they've got Tom Hanks to play Rusty Russell. I think. So don't hold me to it. Tom Hanks is really interested in playing Rusty Russell, and I think we might begin filming, you know, as early as the fall. So the story just continues to go on and on and on. I came upon the story in 2006. I was watching ESPN, which is all I ever watch, pretty much. And remind me to tell the Jones story before I stop. I was watching ESPN, and they were doing a feature on a guy named Hardy Brown. Well, everybody who's read the book sitting in this room knows who Hardy Brown is. How many sports stories open with a murder? Well, of course, we open the book with the murder of Hardy Brown Sr., which is what took Hardy Brown Jr. to the Masonic home, which gave me a chance to write the book. Well, the story was about Hardy Brown being the meanest man in football in the 1950s. And I wasn't really into it. You know, I was eating lunch and I wasn't really paying attention, but I had one ear on it, and Steve Sable, bless his heart, recently died, asked Hardy Brown, "How did you get so tough?" And Hardy Brown said, "It was at the home." And all of a sudden, my ears perk up. Because if there is an orphanage that had a football team, that is a Jim Dent book, because that's what I do. Those are the kinds of books that I do. But Sable then went on to another line of questioning. That light is following me. Which is okay. Sable went on to a different line of questioning. And he finally, at the end of the interview, kind of got back to what I wanted to hear. He said, "Hardy, was there ever a player tougher than you?" I can't outrun that. I thought I had it for a minute. Was there ever a player tougher than you? And Hardy said, "Absolutely not." Then he paused and he said, "Unless it was at the Masonic home." I'm Googling. You know, I'm on my computer. Where is the Masonic? I had never heard of it. And it was in Fort Worth, and I've spent about 40 years of my life in Dallas and Fort Worth. I called my sister, and I said, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever heard of in my life." They got an orphanage in Fort Worth called the Masonic home that had a football team in the Depression, and she's Googling. And in about 10 minutes, she said, I was in Houston. She said, "You better get in your car and get up there." And I did. I drove that night from Houston to Fort Worth. In fact, I slept in the parking lot outside of the Masonic home, which I noticed when I got there had a 6-foot fence around it. And I'm going, "Oh my God, it's closed. I got here too late. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to write this story." So the dawn came, and I could start to see things a little bit more clearly, and I could see a cop at a little shack at the entrance to the home. So I said, "Oh boy, I got to get tangled up with the cops now." So I go and ask him. I said, "Where is everybody? What happened?" He said, "The home just closed. After 106 years, the damn thing had just closed." And I said, "Is there anybody here?" And he said, "There's one person and she's the superintendent of schools, and her name is Diane Thornton, and you're lucky she's here because she's leaving tomorrow. You know, everybody's going to be gone. So I said, will you please get her on the phone? So he gets Diane Thornton. She's on the back of the campus, back in her office. He gets her on the phone and he says, Diane, there's a guy out here who claims to be Jim Dent. And he also claims that he wrote the Junction Boys. And I can hear Diane through the phone screaming at the top, he did! He did! Let him in! So they let me in. And I drove to the back, and I found Diane, and she was sitting at her desk, and there was this picture behind her, and you've seen it in the book. It's the long picture of all the orphans in 1938, with Rusty Russell right in the middle. His son was in the picture, and I said, I've got to have that picture. I've got to have this for the book. Needless to say, it's double trucked right at the first of the book. And she got up and she pointed to one of the football players. And she said, you're not going to believe this, but this is my dad. He was on that 1938 team. And his name is Norman Strange. Not only was he on the 1938 team, he caught the winning touchdown pass. He and Miller Mosley caught touchdown passes in that 38 game against Highland Park that beat Highland Park and led them all the way to the state semifinals, again in 1938. I think I've said that about 3 times. Norman Strange led me to Doug Lord, led me to Miller Mosley. I found Jeff Brown on my own, but I was lucky because I found Diane Thornton right off the bat, and not only that, the museum was still open, which was, I wish y'all could have seen it when you made your tour, because, and I want to kill the guy who tore it down. They had pictures of the graduating classes of 1898 and 1899, and the men, the young men, had on suits and ties, and the girls had made their own dresses. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. Just something came over me that said, this might be the most important story that I ever write in my life. And when that happens, I'm going to tell you something. When a writer can get a shot of adrenaline right off the bat, something big is going to happen. And I tore through the state. I found Hardy Brown was dead. But I went to his former hometown in Childress County, and I actually found, I was so motivated and I was so moved by all of this, I found his grave. And it was a pine box, because I went to the Childress County Courthouse to get some information about the murders of Hardy Brown. And the woman who was in charge of the art, 3 ladies carried these big bound books with case files going back to 1927, from the bottom of Childress County Courthouse all the way to the top, so I could go through this stuff. I said, I will go down there and get this stuff. And they said, no, the sheriff won't let you go down there. I said, okay. But that's how I found out about the Gossip Brothers. And these mean 2 guys who had killed Hardy Brown's dad. And Hardy Brown witnessed the murders. You know this, you read the book. But the most amazing thing to me, at least about the early part of the book, is that the brother-in-law went to kill the Gossip Brothers, and he took Hardy with him. Hardy witnessed him murdering the Gossip Brothers. This guy went off to federal prison for a number of years. By the time he was 5 years old and he got to the Masonic home, he had witnessed his father's death and the death of the Gossip Brothers. And he walks into the Masonic home, and everything is gone. His mother is gone. His mother ran off. He has a family because the siblings were with him. But Can you imagine in 1927, at that age, you walk into this place with these strange looking buildings, nothing you have ever seen like this before in your life. It was Gothic. In fact, the administration building that y'all saw when you made the tour, did they tell you that was the foundation of the original building? In 1896, that foundation was set. So you saw it, they just didn't tell you what you were seeing. It ended up being the greatest adventure that Hardy Brown would ever go through in his life. And we talked about this a little bit at the luncheon. From age 5 to age 18, he's basically institutionalized. But he got this wonderful education along with the other kids. All of them went to college. They all, this was a Charles Dickens place when it first opened. It was more of a vocational school. But with the coming of Rusty Russell, who I think is, the more I know about this guy, who told me all the stories about Rusty Russell, was probably one of the most important characters in the history of this state. I mean, he's up there, to me, with the guys who fought in the Alamo, with the people who fought at San Jacinto, historical-wise, because he had a mission in life, and that was to help people, because he had lost his eyesight in World War I at the Battle of St. Mihiel. And he told God, after a year of blindness, if you'll let me see again, I will do something for people. It will be more than coaching. I will go on a mission. And you know what, by God? In 1927, he had a state semifinal team at Temple High School that he left to go to the orphanage, and they had no football team. When he got there, they had, y'all look for the gravel field. It's still there. That's where they practiced. That field is still there back by the goalpost. They had 6 leather helmets. They had no football. How do you start a football team without a football? Clabber Girl cans. That's Darrell Royal had done the same thing in Oklahoma back during the Depression. 1932, and I know you know the story. Everybody in Fort Worth got on the trains and went to Corsicana. There was supposed to be seating for 6,000. There was 19,000 drunks at the game, and the stands filled out, and the cops were drunk, and the fans had to stand on the field behind the offense to watch the game. I found Leon Pickett in 2007. He was the last living player who played in the 32 championship game. And you got to remember, this little football team had started only 5 years earlier with no football to practice with. 6 leather helmets. They didn't have a school bus. They rode around on the back of a truck that used to haul hay and pigs. Leon Pickett was 95 years old, and he was in a senior's home in Fort Worth, assisted living, but he was clear as a bell. He walked 3 miles a day, and I went to see him for 5 straight afternoons. He remembered every play. 95 years old, remembered every play of the game. He remembered everybody who was at the home. He remembered everything that had gone before and everything that had gone after. So I go away from Leon Pickett and I write the book. And oddly enough, as I'm writing the book, a lot of these guys start to die. I told Marianne there's 5 of them still alive today. And I thought Leon Pickett was fine until I got a phone call. And it was his daughter. And she said, Jim, I know the book's not coming out until September, but I got to have one fast. I said, Daddy is dying. So I thought about driving to Virginia at the presses to get a book. But Joe Rinaldi overnighted me a book. I got it to her. Leon was in Midland, Texas. He was in a nursing home, and she read it to him for three straight days, and he died on the fourth. As she finished it the night before he died, that man wanted to live, to have that book read to him. Everywhere I go, people are touched by this story. I mean, some of my books, like the Junction Boards, was, you know, it was very Bryant and it was tough. But I think people can relate to the kind of people that were at the Masonic home who lived there and loved it and didn't have shoes to wear 6 months out of the year. And they had this guy named Rusty Russell who became not only their coach, but he became the principal. And I hope you enjoyed the book. I'm not done yet. I still got to tell you my Jerry Jones story. I hope you enjoyed the book. But I got to tell you, I tell every audience that I speak to, or anybody that I sign the book to or give the book to, get your kids to read it. Because it's like nothing. They'll go, what? They did what? They had no football, they had no shoes, they had no hope, and I know I'm repeating myself, but they all went to college because of the Masonic home. It became like a prep school. And TCU gave a scholarship, one scholarship every year, to a Masonic home student, and one of those, he graduated in 1938, I mentioned him just a minute ago, was Miller Mosley, who got his degree from TCU in 2 years. He was that smart. He was working on his master's at North Carolina in 1942. The head of the department, his last name was Rosen, said, Miller, you're the smartest guy I got. We're going to Baltimore. And Miller said, why are we going to Baltimore? He said, because we're going to go help Einstein make the bomb. 21-year-old Miller Mosley did the math on thermal diffusion, worked side by side with Einstein, and he was a Masonic home kid. You know, it's just amazing. In 1935, 36, or 35. Remember Sandy Ball? I know I see some older faces in the crowd. I see some guys who probably know their football. Sammy Ball, to me, was maybe the greatest football player who ever lived. In 1936, he led TCU to the national championship, and the other three members of his backfield all went to the Masonic home. They all played at the Masonic home. I could go on and on and on about all of the success stories that came out of this place. But when I sit down and talk to Doug Lord or Norman Strange, and I do see these people from time to time, and there was a great guy named Weedy Seeley who we lost about a year ago. He was the quarterback. Man, that fire is still in their eyes. It is. They remember what happened to them. They remember the pain of losing a parent and having to be taken away from their mother. By the way, I think you know that Hardy Brown's mother ran off down the road on the day that her husband was killed because she was scared to death of the Gossip Brothers. But miraculously, they went to a place in East Fort Worth on this beautiful hill. If you haven't been there, I think you should go. I spoke there to Uplift Education about 3 or 4 months ago. There's actually 2 schools inside the home now. There's the all-church home, which was started by the sister of Sid Richardson. Was her name Susan Bass? She just died. There's 2 schools, the all-church home and the Uplift Education. And I told this story to a couple of people, including Mary Ann, at lunch, that when I was speaking at the Masonic home, this woman came up to me and she was crying. Now, it's not odd for people to come up to me crying because I write these sad damn books. And you know, sometimes I cry when I write them. But she gave me that look that the woman had given me at the Arlington, at the Cowboy Stadium, like she was going to kill me. She had this, she walked up to me and she said, "You know what your book did for me?" And I said to myself, here we go again, because there's so many of these. I mean, this book has legs, it has tentacles, and when the movie comes out, there's no telling what's going to happen. She said, "I found my brother because of your book." The family had been split up. Her little brother had been taken off to the Masonic home. She was all, God, outside that light. It's like the sun. You know, God bless the sun, but sometimes you, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm kidding. She had found her brother because of my book, because I had mentioned, he had played for the Mighty Mites in the 90s, and I just made a quick mention of him because he was a real cool kid in the epilogue. And that's how they got back together like 6 months ago. They hadn't seen each other in 30 years. She had no idea what happened to him because she changed her name and the parents had died and there was no reference to where he had gone. So it's just amazing. I'm blessed. If I hadn't watched TV that day, I would not have known about the story. But because of that, we get together and talk about this. I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 6 years, and most of it has been about 12 Mighty Orphans. But people just get enamored of the story, and amazingly, I didn't make any of it up. Now I've been known to. No, I've been known to exaggerate maybe just a little bit, but there was absolutely no need for any of that. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you, but before I go, am I doing Q&A? We're going to do a little Q&A. Have y'all got some questions? Okay, before I get into Q&A, I got to tell you my Jerry Jones story. My first book, which no one in here read, did anyone in this room ever read King of the Cowboys? That was my first book. I'm about to tell you why you didn't read it. Every copy was sold. Totally sold out. 35,000 copies of my first book were sold. And amazingly, my publisher would not do a second edition. Publishers always do second. I think the Mighty Mites, 12 Mighty Orphans is like its 27th printing. But what had happened is that Jones had threatened them that if they did a second edition, he was going to sue and take all of their money, and he had all these lawyers. So I ran into Jerry about 2 years ago. Super Bowl was in Arlington, and I did a book on the Super Bowl. And Jerry and I had not talked in 15 years because I wrote about his womanizing, I wrote about his cheating to get money to buy the Cowboys. I wrote about all the different things that he had done before he got to Dallas, and then for a few years after that. And I handed Jerry my Super Bowl book because we had a picture of Jerry in there. And he said, "Brother Jim, you know, I've always wanted to mend that bridge." And I said, "Jerry, you can't mend the bridge. I'm the one who burned it." And I said, "Jerry, the book's sold beautifully, but I've never found a single person who's read it." I said, "Jerry, did you buy all the books?" He said, "Brother Jim, I did. And I warehoused them for you. Go to Half Price Books sometime. I warehoused them for you." They're trickling out. They're starting to trickle out because somebody in that warehouse wanted the damn things gone. And you'll go, if you ever get into Dallas, go to the Half Price bookstore, the big one, on Mockingbird, and you'll find a copy for about $2 or $3. And I'm not saying you should read it, but just look. You will open it, and you know when you can tell a book's never been opened? And you can tell by that smell that it hasn't been anywhere but a box. That's what it's like. But that's what I had. Well, actually, I made some money. That's what I had to overcome to finally get my book career going. Thank God for the Junction Boys, which came 4 years later, became an ESPN movie and saved me. I wrote a passage on Facebook last week about Pat Summerall, who died. Went to his funeral last Saturday, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I sat with Staubach and Eggman, and all the Cowboys were there. And there were 1,000 people and a 300-member choir. But I wrote this passage about Pat Summerall that in 1997, my book career, I was on my butt. The Jones book, nobody had read. My next book, nobody bought. And The Junction Boys was my next book. And my publisher told me, you got one more chance. Or you're going to be back in the newspaper business, or you're going to be selling cars or something else. So I worked very hard on The Junction Boys. I gave it everything that I had, but I knew I needed to promote it. It needed a push. I'm pretty good about getting out and selling my books. So I went to Fox Sports Southwest, and we put together a documentary. I helped produce it. I wrote the script, and then I said, now I got to have a voice. I've got to have someone to narrate this thing that's going to give it the punch for everybody in the world to watch. And I need the damn guy to do it free. So all I did was call the greatest sportscaster of all time, who was my very good friend, Pat Summerall. And he said yes, like that. And he came down to Fox Sports, and I was one of the producers. The director said, Jim, it's 20 minutes of script that you've written. He's going to be here. Pat Summerall is going to be here all day trying to finish this. And I didn't say a word. Pat Summerall sat down and didn't bungle a single syllable. He got up, walked out, got in his car, and went off to play golf. Like nothing had happened. And we're all standing there frozen, and the director says, Jim, that's the most, I've been in television for 40 years. That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Fox Sports ran it on Thanksgiving. This was the year of Bonfire, and they didn't have Bonfire. So we all went to the candlelight vigil, and then everybody went home, I assume, or went to the bars or somewhere. And at 8 o'clock, Fox Sports Southwest ran the documentary. And it put me on the New York Times bestseller list. So that's why I'm standing here. Otherwise, I've been selling cars. And then ESPN, because of all of it, made the movie. So thank you, Pat Summerall. I'm going to throw it open for questions because I can see some very curious minds out there. Who's first?
Tell us more about Rusty Russell and where he went and how long he stayed there. Did he go to Highland Park and then SMU?
Rusty Russell's parents left him or sent him off to a school when he was 12 years old. He was basically an orphan. Went to college, coached the Masonic Home, and in 42, Highland Park had been trying to hire him for years because the Masonic Home always beat Highland Park. Well, all the Mighty Mites went off to war, and Rusty lost his basically lost all his good players. He went to Highland Park in 42 and inherited Bobby Lane and Doug Walker. But he also coached the Mighty Mites that year out of the goodness of his heart because they didn't have a coach. He coached both teams into the playoffs. They were, the great thing is Highland Park was playing on Friday night and the Mighty Mites were playing on Saturday night. And what he would do during the week, because he was paid to coach Highland Park, he would get the team captains to coach the Mighty Mites team. Well, they both won, they both ended up tying for the by-district title. There was 3 teams, and they had to flip a coin to eliminate one of the teams. And, oddly enough, the Mighty Mites lost the toss. Otherwise, Rusty Russell would have been on both sidelines on the same night. He went on to SMU. You know, he'd been in the spread offense. He went to SMU and became this unbelievable mind. You know, he beat Notre Dame, he beat Ohio State, he beat Texas, and then he lost. I think it was the last game of the 48 season when Doak won the Heisman Trophy. Started off the next season poorly, and he got fired. Which just kills me, because I went to SMU, you know, and I hate to see good people. We've screwed up so many things at SMU. There's no time. And he went on to Victoria Junior College and coached there. He went to Victoria Junior College and won like 8 out of 9 junior college national championships. You know, because he was that good. But he was so turned off by the SMU experience, he would not coach on a big-time level. In 1961, he got a phone call from Old Baldy, a guy named Tom Landry, and wanted Rusty to be his offensive coordinator. And Rusty said, I just can't get back into big-time football. Well, he got another call 2 weeks later from a guy in Green Bay by the name of Vince Lombardi. And he turned down Lombardi too. How could he turn down Landry? And he did. Because he just didn't, he loved his association with the Mighty Mikes. He loved that experience. And he didn't want to be soured by anything. But when I decided to do the book, Rusty Russell's long dead. You know, he's gone. Hardy Brown's long gone. So I found Rusty Russell's grandson. A guy named Russ, I lost that line. Rusty Russell's grandson, his name was Russ Morton, and he worked for Smith Barney in New York. Very smart guy, very rich guy. So I called his office in New York, and I said, yeah, I need to talk to Russ Morton. I know, you know, he's probably very busy. And the lady said, Jim, he's been hoping you would call him, because he heard that you had the contract on the book. But at this moment, he's in Japan. I said, okay, when he comes back, ask him to call me. I hung up the phone, and my hand was no longer down than the phone rang, and it was Russ Morton calling from Japan. And he had fished with his grandfather as a kid, and he loved his grandfather. And he was a football, I know you, now that I got this light out of my eye. He loved his grandfather, and he had all the stories. I think he was probably not a better source, but pretty close to being as good a source if I'd had Rusty Russell alive. You know, that's the amazing stuff. And I'm telling you, I told Tom Hanks this. I said, you played a lot of cool roles, but if you really want to be an American hero, and I think you do, you need to play Rusty Russell. And I think he's going to do it. Don't hold me to it, but I think sometime, probably not this Christmas coming up, but maybe the Christmas down the road, we're going to see it. I know you got a question. Did you ask me all the questions at lunch?
I think so. I'm just loving listening.
Well, I can go on. I've got stamina. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you had never been to Athens, Texas, in your book.
I've been to Athens, Greece. Have you?
You mentioned in your book the name Dick Dwell.
Oh, yes, and he was the publisher.
Yes.
He's all through that section of my. Do you know him?
Yes.
Why is he not here?
He just went back to Dallas.
I live in Dallas. If I come to Athens, I want to see Dick Dwelling.
They just moved like 6 months ago.
He is, you know what, that guy is cool. He was cool even in high school. Do you know what the Highland Park people did for the Mighty Mikes? They bought them uniforms to go on into the playoffs. If you'd see, I talked to Rich Flowers. I think he wrote a story about me for Saturday. And you tell that guy I want to talk to him again.
He's in Dallas.
What part of Dallas? That's not far from where I live.
Across from the Baptist church.
I know exactly. I know exactly what Dick Dwelling. he almost won the game for him. You know, he was that good. Highland Park got ahead 12-0, thanks to him. So this is not my last trip to Athens. I promise. I love this place. It's beautiful. And my book debut on my next book is going to be in Palestine. Well, we're going to have a bunch of book debuts in Dallas, too, if you want to come to those. But it's about Super Bill Bradley. Remember Bill Bradley? He played for the Palestine Wildcats. And a guy named Jerry Levias, who was the first black scholarship athlete in the Southwest Conference. They met at an all-star game. Didn't know each other, knew of each other. And this was during a period of time, and it was a sad part of our country, and a sad part of Texas, is that blacks and whites didn't mix. You had white teams, you had black teams, they didn't play each other. In Texas in 1965. Bradley Levias became tremendous friends in a place called Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the Big 33 game in 1965 with Bobby Lane and Doak Walker as the coaches. They had lost the previous year. Lane and Walker had gone to the governor, John Conley, and said Pennsylvania kept scheduling the game against Texas on the same day as our All-Star game. So we couldn't take the first string. They went to Conley, and the governor had the coaches change the date of our All-Star game. So Bill Bradley and Jerry Levias and all of these great players, Norm Boulash, could go on and play. So they had revenge on their minds. They had the best players in Texas. Bill Bradley did not start at quarterback. They got behind 10-0, and Lane calls the team together. On the sideline, he says, "Is there anybody on this team who can play quarterback?" And Jerry Levias said, "My blue-eyed soul brother." That's what he had named him during the week, because they had danced to the radio and the Temptations. And I took a picture of them 3 weeks ago, 50 years of friendship. That's right at the end of the book. I'm not going to tell you how the game turned out, because I want you to read it. It's called The Kids Got It Right, because it was the kids. The adults couldn't figure it out. It took the kids to figure out how to get over racism, you know, and it is Remember the Titans, only better. So that's my next book. It'll come out August the 20th. I think we're going to have the party in Palestine on the 17th at the Budweiser complex. But I'm going to be in contact with Mary Ann and Kelly and Jennifer and Brad and everybody. So I'll let y'all know. Okay. Come on.
One more.
Yes.
Of all the books you've written, which one really changed you?
Oh, it was 12 Mighty Orphans. If I hadn't written the Junction Boys, I wouldn't be here. Now, I got to say that. If the Junction Boys had not jumped out to become an amazing success, I wouldn't be here. But I was kind of down. I was in a bad place in 2006 when I found out about the story. I lived it. It brought me back. I was the underdog. So that was the most personal I'd ever felt about a story. And it's a damn good story, too. And you know what? Somebody wrote it pretty well, too. So that's it. It is. But, you know, again, I can't say that without saying the Junction Boys. Because my second book, not only did Jones take away all the first books, my second book didn't sell anything. And the Junction Boys became one of the top sports sellers of all time. So thanks for that question. And yes?
You talk about your writing process. When you write, how you edit, who edits for you, process.
Well, I am, and I was telling some people at lunch, I write all the time because I'm making a living. And I'm hoping they make one of these movies so I can either retire or start writing fiction. I love writing my books, but it is very difficult. You try to hold 100,000 words in your head at the same time and know where every one of them is on, and where it is on the page. I love it. not only do I have one coming out on the 20th, I started my 11th book. So I get up early when I'm in the writing mode. I mean, when it's time to pin my ears back and make that deadline, I'm up at 5, and I'm writing no later than 6. And I'll write until I drop. You know, some days it might be 2 o'clock, some days it might be midnight, you know.
Is it PC, Mac?
I've got a PC, I've got a very good chair. I just bought a $900 chair. That's the most important thing. It is, because your back and your butt. I've got a chair with a lumbar support. And if I push back just enough and get it just right, that thing holds me up. But I got so far behind on this last book that I had to write 3,000 words on Christmas and about 2,000 words on New Year's Day. You know, because I got involved in the movies, in the Curse Beyond the Game movie, and 12 Mighty Orphans, and finding investors and all that good stuff. That was my excuse. Then one day I looked up and I said, I gotta have this done in 3.5 months, and I haven't written a word. But I got it done, and they loved it. So I do. I get up. The best thing you can do when you write is get up and go to work. It is, I think. You know, I hear people say, well, I can only write at night. Well, if I waited till the night, I wouldn't get it done, because there's other things I want to do. Oddly enough, and this was kind of a crazy part of my life, and I made a really crazy decision in doing this. I wrote 12 Mighty Orphans living in Las Vegas, because my intention was to go there and eventually write novels about gangsters. But this is what happened. I would get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in Las Vegas, and I would write until 3:30, and I would go to the casino and bet some games, and I would come home at 8:30 or 9 and go to bed. I was staying out of trouble, but I got it. That's the kind of routine you actually want to be in. You want to go to bed fairly early, and you want to get up. That's what I do. I want to have 1,000 words written by 9 o'clock in the morning. Is that what you do? How many? I do. I count every one of them. And I go, what the? I know I've written more than that. I read something on the internet about 2 weeks ago. The writer does the same thing that I do. It was a he, I think. He writes before breakfast. I do too. I don't eat until I'm like an hour or two into writing. But I'm pouring that coffee. You know, and I'm gonna tell you what, you come over to my house in the morning, I'll wake you up. I'll get you going. I'm too old to be one of the players. I'm gonna be a coach. I want to be on the sideline, standing next to Tom Hanks. All the time. Because I know where the camera is going to be. It's not going to be on me. It's going to be on Tom Hanks. So I thought about that. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. You just made one of the best points I've heard in a long time. Doc Hall is going to be a major character in this movie. Because he's going to be in all the dialogue with Rusty, riding around in the truck. And you know who wants to play? You don't know, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to be surprised. The person who wants to play Doc Hall, remember Daryl Moose Johnston? He told me 5 years ago, he said, I want to be in the movie. And I said, well, you got to be Doc Hall. And they're going to look at him. I don't know if he's old enough. But Doc Hall he's got a lot of the key lines. That guy, as you know, because you read the book, You didn't buy them all and put them in a warehouse. Doc Hall never charged him a nickel. He had his own practice in Fort Worth, but he loved the orphans so much that he never charged. And they got the best care you could possibly get. Yeah, you're Doc Hall. They're talking. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He was in Lincoln. He was okay. How many of y'all seen Lincoln? God, everybody. Wasn't it great?
Yeah.
The Secretary of War. What was that actor's name? Remember the scene where I think you're getting close. Remember the scene where Lincoln starts telling a story in the war room, and the guy goes, "Oh my God, not another story." And Lincoln tells this story for about 10 minutes, and the whole war room stops. Well, it's that gray-haired guy. I think he's going to be. That's who they're looking at to play Doc Hall. That was the story that Lincoln told about the British going into the washroom and sitting down and looking at the picture of George Washington. And that's why they were never in there very long, because we're looking at George Washington, scared him to death. So, anyway, I went off on a tangent.
What's your favorite book that you haven't written that somebody else has written?
Do you think it's possible that I could have a favorite book that's not mine? My favorite book of all time is The Grapes of Wrath. Steinbeck is my favorite writer. I read fiction, and I like classic literature. I was a journalism was so easy at SMU, I managed to get also an English degree. But I love all of Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath, and I actually, to warm up my brain, I'll read the first chapter. Go read the first chapter of The Grapes of Wrath when you get home. Just read the first chapter. It'll get you so fired up. The writing's incredible. So yeah, that's my favorite book. What's your favorite book? 12 Mighty Orphans. Tell me what your favorite book is. Yeah? I love Mr. I was fortunate enough to meet him a long time ago. Yes? Are you Johnny Manziel? I knew you were Johnny Manziel. You like Friday Night Lights?
Yeah, Friday Night Lights.
It's good. And in fact, I think Friday Night Lights helped pave the road for me. I don't like Buzz. I don't like the writer. And I told him that. But Friday Night Lights was a good book. And that opened the door for the thinking on the Junction Boys. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Buzz, even though I hate him. You ever felt that way? It's not the first time. Yes, ma'am.
Share some of your great experiences being a sports journalist.
I've had some wonderful experiences in my books, and I'm going to tell you about a couple. I love the Junction Boys. I am still friends with all the living Junction Boys. And I went to Jack Hardy's funeral 2 weeks ago and saw them all. Because they're awe-inspiring people. I enjoyed the Texas guys, the 69 Texas guys, Super Bill Bradley, Chris Gilbert, James Street. I get an attachment to the guys I'm writing about because you spend so much time with them. But and I'm going to write my life story someday if Jerry doesn't buy all the books. I covered the Cowboys for 11 years, and it was like traveling with the Beatles. It really was. They were rock stars. They were so famous and so popular. I started with Staubach, went all the way through Dorset. Randy White remains one of my great friends. We'd pull up. Everybody thought that the Eagles fans were mean and ornery to the Cowboys. We'd pull up to the hotel in Philadelphia, and there'd be 3,000 fans outside from Philadelphia, and they were Cowboy fans. My first year, I was 24 years old. Can you imagine being 24 years old? I was 24 years old and they went to Super Bowl 13. Can you imagine what that experience was for me? I mean, it was mind-blowing. But it got me going. It got me where I wanted to be. I mean, we'd go to Thousand Oaks, California and spend 6 weeks. Because Landry took the free agents, you know, and we'd go to camp on July 4th and stay until August 25th. You know, teams go for 2 weeks now. But can you imagine getting to spend, you know, young, single in Thousand Oaks, California with all those divorcees?
What were those years that you go?
78 through 90. After I wrote the book on Jones, I had to go into radio. For a while.
I don't think Jerry Jones has many fans in Dallas. Or a lot of other places in this country.
You know,
The way he treated Tom Landry was just awful.
I saw Tom Landry Jr. at Summerall's funeral. He's lost all of his hair, and he looks just like Tom. It's absolutely amazing. He's like the second coming. I want to tell you something. I know Jerry because I grew up in a little place right outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, and so did he. And I watched him play high school football. And I interviewed him intensively for that book that he bought all the copies. And this guy doesn't have a thick skin. He's pretty sensitive. And I guarantee you, there are times when he's depressed. He's hurting. I'm going to guarantee you, the guy's hurting. He's not, you know, he acts like, well, I'm Jerry Jones. I'm Jerry Jones. You know, I can do anything I want to do. He's not feeling that way. He's feeling hurt by this hate, and it's prevalent.
Looks like you've been dug up.
You want to really hurt his feelings? That's a great plan. I'm not getting dug up. He cartooned his face, you know, and then he got these, what are they called, veneers, and he didn't get them on straight. I wonder who his dentist was. And he really doesn't look very good. He doesn't at all. Yes?
Curiosity, is Jones as oblivious as he seems to be?
No.
Well,
You mean about football?
no.
No, he knows the criticism.
No, about the way he treated Landry and how many people, I mean, we were dying of Cowboy fans. I probably haven't watched the full game in years.
He knows. He knows that he made a mistake. He won't admit it. But when he's asked about it, he said it was my job to do it. It was not his job. It was the job of Bum Bright to fire Landry. Because Bum hated Landry. And that's why Bum sold the team to Jones, because Jones promised to fire Landry. What happened is that Bum would go to the Christmas parties, and Tom wouldn't come to him. And didn't want anything to do with him. But Tom is not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He's one of the best guys I've ever met in my life. But the reason he didn't talk to Bum Bright is because he never had to talk to Clint Murkison. Clint Murkison was the greatest owner who ever lived, and let Tom and Tex and do what they want to do. So Tom felt like, I don't have to talk to him. Well, he kind of did. And he really made Bum Bright mad. So that's my story. It's true. And it's in the Jerry Jones book if you can find it. I've got about 10 of them now.
Before you leave, you should drive to the Adams cemeteries and look at some clocks are all there. Just right here.
Really? Is Clint here? Because his dad was from here. Clint Senior was from here. You know what? I hadn't thought about that. Was the Big Rich a great book? That was a great. And I mentioned Sid Richardson a little while ago. Sid Richardson went to the orphans games with Eamon Carter. Those guys were amazing. Clint Jr. was amazing too. I could tell you some stories, but would have to be in a bar. Thank you very much. I love you. I love Athens. And I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, and I'm going to sign. I'm signing over here, right? And I've got 3 Sharpies.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dent, very much for spending your time with us here today. We really enjoyed that. Thank you for attending this final event of our Wreath in the Valley project for this year. We appreciate those of you who have supported this year-long project. We'll be starting again next fall with a new book, a new year. We invite you to log into the TVCC website later in the summer to get some information about our new book project starting this fall. Mr. Dent will be here signing books, so feel free to come forward and have him to sign your books. We also have the art show going on out here in the entrance area and then also in the hallway here of the administration building. So be sure to just take your time and look at the art pieces. Many of the art pieces out here in this hallway were inspired by the book. If you've read the book, you'll recognize some of the pictures. There's a picture of Old Blue out there and some other things. And then please feel free to peruse that and just take your time. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you just want to come by and say hello, that's great too, because I'd like to shake your hand and meet you.